Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. Today we're in the Mirage 2000C and we're doing an update cockpit familiarization video. So let's break the cockpit down into sections as ever to make it more digestible. Left console, where I'm scanning the cursor here. Main flight instrument panel, kind of roughly where I'm scanning here. HUD, along with bow. Lower auxiliary panel down here. Stick and pedals, obviously, rudder pedals. And right console. As ever, let's start on left console. Left console starting at the back. We've got emergency mode 5 for the fly-by-wire. If our fly-by-wire faults, I've never had this happen, but if it happens, you can go to channel 5 here, which gets you into a limp mode, just to allow you basic control to get back. The autopilot and fly-by-wire test system, you're going to use this during the startup procedure to test the autopilot, get a green light, test the fly-by-wire system to get a green light before you go and fly, obviously. We've got these guys here. We've got, this one is a cover and then a fuel dump button there. We've got engine emergency control cover. So the computer controls the engine. If the computer goes down, you can open this up and switch to a backup engine control computer. Similar here, if I can get it, we've got a secondary oil control cover. Again, if primary oil system goes down, you actually have a secondary oil system. This guy here is, if afterburner gets stuck on due to lack of normal engine control, you can cut the afterburner off manually here. This guy here is the radar weight on wheels authorized. So if ground crew need to override the weight on wheels sensor to block the radar, they can do that there for testing purposes or whatever. This, whatever it is not here, not modelled. Back to secondary trim. So we have the ability to, as a backup trim, if the stick trim doesn't work, we have a kind of little joystick here to do emergency trim. As far as we're aware, it's not actually modelled in DCS. We've had a play and it doesn't seem to be modelled. We also have rudder trim left and right here. We have the engine in-flight air start, and for emergency we will be doing a tutorial video on that to cover the use of that. Next, volumes. These are the volumes of the associated systems. We've got the approach system, we've got the beacon system, we've got the UHF radio, we've got the UHF VHF radio, we've got the missile magic tone, growl, whatever. We've got the TACAN, Morse code identifier, volume, or the VOR ALS. I think it's a Morse. No, I can't remember. Yeah, it probably will be a Morse code identifier as well. And amplifiers. We have two amplifiers in this aircraft, and we can switch between 1 and 2. Next, to the side of the seat here, we've got our emergency liquid oxygen supply. We've got our dilution, I guess, normal or 100% oxygen. And we've got our test. We can test the supply here, and we've got a modal switch and a temporary switch. Got the throttle handle here that you're going to bind, obviously, to your HOTAS. The buttons on it are not operable. You have to bind them, obviously, to buttons on your HOTAS or keys on the keyboard. Radar controls. We've got the range scale. 40 miles, 20 miles, 80 miles, whatever you want for the radar. This guy here says that, but it's not actually functional according to the manual, December 2020. We've got the azimuth coverage, whether we want 60 degrees left, 60 degrees right, down to 15 degrees left, 15 degrees right. We've got this guy here. This guy decides how long a target will stay on the radar before it disappears, assuming that the radar hasn't, can't see that anymore. The delay before the target disappears. PRF, pulse repetition frequency. So different radar emission frequencies are better with the target either moving away or coming towards us or going side on. We can have high frequency at the top there, a low frequency down there, or an interleaved which will skip between high and low frequency. I think it's defaulted to high. Lines, American planes, this tends to be called bars. This is the thickness or the elevation, the up and downness, the height of the radar scan zone in lines or bars, and each line is about 4 degrees depending on what aircraft you're looking at. I'm going to go forward here. We've got TDC mode. This determines whether we want to show regards to the scannable elevation of our scan zone where our cursor is, whether we want to show the upper limit and the lower limit, or whether we want to show the center. This guy here is to do with air to ground, but it is not modeled. This guy here is whether we want to use a PPI or a B-scope. So PPI set out realistically in terms of a top-down view. So we are there. That is the distance there. And as we look out, you know, that direction is that direction. That direction is that direction. So if you like a kind of one-to-one scale of what's in front of us. Now a B-scope, as I'm sure you all know already, but there, is different. What it does is it stretches that kind of slice of cake shape into a square, known as a B-scope, and that's the traditional way, especially with American aircraft. So that slice of cake has been stretched into that square there, which just for radar usage can be easier. And as standard, this aircraft uses PPI. Radar test switch, apparently not modelled. A couple of buttons here, and I think they're to do with the air to ground, and they're not modelled. Master control mode. A, ret off. PCH, warm up. SIL, warm and ready but not emitting, and EM for emissions, and that will make it work, but obviously not on the ground. Left here we actually have a backup throttle handle, which is kind of weird to get to, so you'll just have to play with it. You see we've got that guy there, so interesting. Next is a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't work or is not modelled, at least in the manual, as it says December 2020. We'll have a quick look purely out of interest. Gain, apparently not modelled. Radar Doppler reject switch, apparently not modelled. Radar rearm, apparently not modelled. Radar contrast, apparently not modelled. Whatever that is, apparently not modelled. And radar illumination. I'm guessing this is air to ground type stuff. Again, not really sure. A little further up, we've got air to air fuel transfer. We've got off. At the top is night, middle is day. Down here, quite interesting. Pellets is the intake slats which allow extra air into the intake, into the engine at high angle of attack. Automatic, which is going to be a normal, or R, which is going to be retracted. Same kind of thing. The shock spikes on in the intakes. We can have cones, I think they're called. We can have them automatic as usual, or we can retract them manually. This guy here is the leading edge slats. We can have them in automatic. Sortie is out, and rentre is retract. Over to this guy here. It is an anti-skid switch cover, which with the anti-skid switch below for obviously anti-skid for the wheels. Next, this guy here. We've got formation lights, navigation lights, anti-collision lights along the format of off, dim, bright. Where next? Two radios, kind of modern digital VHF/UHF radio here. We're not going to go too deep into this because it's actually quite complex, and I've got a full tutorial on this and that radio. But master mode, off, on, and pretty much none of those other ones do anything because they're just not modelled, they don't need to. Various control, mem, transfer and confirm buttons here, I think they were, and numeric, and various other sub-meanings you can have for those buttons there. And you can do preset channel selection as well as preset channel programming, as well as manual channel programming, and this is going to be your toggle for the channel selector. And the rest, just go and watch the video, please. More old-fashioned manual UHF only, so kind of 225 to 400 megahertz. This is pre-selected channel only, and I think you're going to have to build these into the mission editor to actually make these channels. You see the channel selection there. You got test, you got off, on, and two modes that aren't modelled in DCS. I don't think. Pretty sure this guy is non-functional. This guy here is power switch, 5 watts or 25 watts. It's probably not modelled. I don't know for sure. But silent switch, known as a squelch, just to squelch the sound, that sound, the noise. This guy here is, I think that's not modelled. I never learned what it was, so that probably means it wasn't modelled. So that's the UHF radio, that's the VHF UHF radio. Next on the wall here, not modelled, is this guy here, the Surapam recorder. It records for policing aircraft that we intercept, not modelled. Landing taxi lights off, taxi lights, landing lights. Police light, strong light we can shine forward, which allows us to illuminate the tail number of an aircraft that we're intercepting for mid-air policing. Next we have flight surface position indicators. So you've got the rudder in the middle. If they're centralised, then they're in the middle. If they're left, right, and the 4 surfaces for the rear of the wings. I can't show them off at the moment because I don't have my stick bound to this aircraft. Next, we have the fly-by-wire reset button. Explains itself. Next, fly-by-wire kind of usage mode. Do we want lightweight air-to-air mode, or heavier weight with air-to-ground stores, or maybe tanks on there? Next is an interesting one. It's a kind of multi-gauge showing the position of various movable parts of the plane, like landing gear, 3 green down and locked. Do you want to go over any more examples on that, RC?
Yeah, so starting from the left, above the left gear is your emergency tail hook light, as yellow. Above that is your nose wheel steering light, which is engaged. It's be blue. The 2 above that are air brake indicators. The 1 down from there on the right is your wheel brakes are being applied, and the next one down is your anti-skid warning light.
Thank you. Next is our fly-by-wire method. It's called gain here, but do we want normal or emergency mode of the fly-by-wire? Next, funny place to have it, but we've got gun arm, so we can arm the gun and non-arm it. Emergency jettison is going to, I think, it jettisons all stores apart from your magics for fighting, gun obviously. Next, emergency gear release, and then the normal gear up and down lever, and that little guy in there is probably the horn silencer, but that's not modelled. This guy here is the emergency canopy jettison. This guy here is a drag chute, obviously where we can deploy and release a drag chute for this aircraft. Next, we have a chronometer, and rather you can put it in and out, but disappointingly they haven't modelled the switches. You can't wind it, you can't stopwatch it. So, well, as far as I can see, I can't click on anything there. Never mind. And up to the instrument panel. Left side first, so waypoint incrementer, increment waypoint up, increment waypoint down. Interestingly, the buttons do not have animations. I never understood that. Next, controls and indicators for autopilot. There are several methods of autopilot, modes, sub-modes. I'm not going to go through all of them now, but we've got a comprehensive video on using the autopilot, if you want to go and watch that. Next, master warning, master caution lights here. They will give tones, they will give lights, and you can cancel them by clicking on them here. Mustn't forget up here a mount for our night vision goggles. Interestingly, I can actually click on it even though they're not there, which is a bit weird, and that would be the method of putting them on your head. Ladder gauge here, and this is showing our current angle of attack in degrees. Next, primary ADI, attitude director indicator. That's what it says on the tin. We can cage it here, uncage it. It's going to show heading, as you can see, 300, 330. It's going to show our pitch. It's going to show us there, wing, tail. And this guy here is going to represent our left and right roll. For instance, roll 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 90 degrees with this guy here. And the thick white line in the middle is going to show the horizon. We've actually got a very small yaw slip cage in there as well, which is always going to be useful. We've got a backlights JN, which is going to be night or day lighting. Next, we've got a VSI, vertical speed indicator, in thousands of feet per minute, climb and dive. Next is the altitude selector desired for the autopilot in hundreds of feet, thousands of feet, and tens of thousands of feet. Next is our speedo in hundreds of knots. Nothing else to say about it there with the needle there. Next we have our barometric altimeter. We've got a needle that's going to show in hundreds of feet around the outside with our total there, including thousands, tens of thousands. And we can adjust the pressure setting with this knob here, and it's going to be reading in millibars. You can see it there, 1011 millibars of pressure. Next is our standby or backup ADI, artificial horizon. We can trim the pitch with this guy here, or at least you're supposed to be able to, and you can cage it as well. Whoops, one we've missed. This guy here, fly-by-wire spin mode. If you turn it on, then there's a description of this guy. If you turn it on, you can override the limits of the fly-by-wire and do a silly spin or something like that. Next, our PCA panel. This here for weapons deployment, setting up, and other things as well. It's not just weapons, it can be navigation as well, actually. Master arm here. We've got selective jettison here, if we want to switch can allow us to selectively jettison stores. Gun mode selector here. Now these guys here are generally functions. They're dynamic depending on what mode you're in. I think we're in navigation mode, for instance, at the moment. They could be types of aiming for the weapons, for instance. Down here, it's generally going to be ordnance, so missiles, bombs, and stuff like that we can choose down here. Again, it's going to be dynamic based on your current loadout. Next, this guy here, technically known as a VTB/HDD panel, or if you're like me, you call it a radar scope. This is obviously where you see the main radar symbology. We've got several buttons around it. This guy here, according to the manual 2020, says it doesn't work. This guy here does work. He will allow you to choose which waypoint you use as bullseye. This guy here, again, according to the manual, don't work. This guy here is a declutter, which allows you in certain circumstances to declutter what you can see by removing certain symbology. This guy here, according to the manual, doesn't work, but it actually does. It allows you to, we believe, go from a top-down to a forward to backwards kind of view, but that's work in progress at the moment of time of making this video. Next, various symbology brightnesses. So, you know, you can change the brightness for certain things. And so on. Power switch, marche, ret, on or off. According to the manual 2020, these buttons don't, whatever they are, don't work. On the right side, we have an accelerometer here showing instantaneous positive G up to 10G and down to negative 5G. Here is our countermeasure display unit. It's going, I can't really explain it now, but it's going to show, for instance, when you're out of chaff, when you're out of flares, when you are deploying chaff. Again, I've got a full countermeasures tutorial where you can go and learn about that more in detail. Next, RWR display, radar warning receiver. It is going to display hostile and friendly radars that we can detect. Again, full video on that if you want to go and watch that and find all the details. We've got a brightness knob here for the display, and we've got 5 indicator lights down at the bottom. Do you want to go over those, RC?
Yeah, so from the left to the right, first one is standby. Second one is active jamming. Third one is RWR status. Fourth one is missile launch IR detector, and fifth one is flares.
Roger. So those are the all the different, if you like, countermeasure / EW methods that we have. We have jammers, we have MWS, RWR, countermeasures, and so on, all kind of linked to each other in a way. Next is our HSI, horizontal situation indicator for navigation. There's really, to be honest, too much symbology to talk about here. We've got a full video on it, but you can see obviously we've got the bearing or heading around the ring. We've got a distance in the middle, various symbologies in here. Master modes we can choose with this guy, for instance, navigation true. I think it's a long time since we studied this. Navigation magnetic, TACAN, various other sub modes that we can use, again covered in the tutorial if you want to go a bit further into that. And we can also select our course here in certain modes. Next, go to our afterburner light. When our afterburner is lit, this guy will show. I think it says PC from memory. Demar, this will glow when the engine is starting. This is our tachometer of the engine. It shows how fast the engine is spinning in percent. This is our engine exhaust temperature in hundreds of degrees Celsius, up to 900 max recommended. This is our fuel flow rate, currently 13 kilograms per minute. This is our selectable bingo fuel, so we can select our own bingo fuel of 1800, 1900, 1700 kilos. Fire warning lights, secondary engine and afterburner section of the aircraft. Fuel control panel, this light goes on during air-to-air fuel transfer. We've got the total shown in kilos here of internal fuel only, and then here's the total, so internal plus external tanks. Switch doesn't work, switch doesn't work. Warning indicator lights, can you go over them in regards to fuel, RC?
Yeah, in that square you'll have a V, AV, or RL. V meaning forward fuselage tanks, AV meaning wing fuel tanks and RL external fuel tanks. They'll be lit when empty.
Copy. We've got here shown in the amount times 100 kilos of fuel in our left feeder tank and in our right feeder tank, and we've got cross feed ability here. No cross feed, cross feed. Another armament panel down here. And regards missiles, do we want to fire left missile? Do we want to fire right missile? Do we want to let the computer decide based on parameters? Regards the Super 530, this is like a prep selector here, and we can prep the missiles, run bid tests. Is it modelled in DCS? We're not sure, but that's what we said. This one here is not functional in DCS. This one here is for a prep for the Magic IR guided missiles. It's going to give us the function to allow to save coolant. Is it modelled in DCS? Again, we're not sure. Test button here, right click. Going to test various lights that you can see. And down, I'll give us a little 5-year-old's drawing of a Mirage and show the various weapons that are currently installed on our aircraft, according to the aircraft. Bombs, do we want them safe, retarded, fuse, delay, instantaneous fuse? How many bombs do we want in a ripple? Between each bomb impact, how many meters times 10 for the ripple? 30 meters times 5 bombs. This is an interesting one. Mode switch for various weapons. We can have it's a two-way switch, and it's best if I pass it over to RC.
So when you're in TOT mode and you have the Super 530s, it will launch both missiles with a 2-second interval between the launch. For rockets and guns, they will keep firing as long as you have the trigger pressed. When you're in PAR mode, the Super 530 will launch a single missile on a single button press. And for the rockets and guns, they will fire in burst mode, which is set in the mission editor.
Super. Next, lower auxiliary panel. Sorry, I can't get the stick out of the way. Out of interest, the stick, as cool as it looks, you can't click the buttons on here. You have to obviously bind them in the controls menu to buttons on your stick. This is the IFF panel. There are certain things you can toggle on here. At the time we stand, 2020, late 2020, as far as we understand, none of this actually does anything. It may do in the future, but for the moment it doesn't. We've got pressures. We've got hydraulic system 1, hydraulic system 2. We've got the pressure reading in, is it tens of bars or is it just bars, RC? I can't really see where I am.
On the cabin pressure?
No, on the hydraulic pressure.
On the other one, it's bar.
That's just bars. Okay.
Tens of bars.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, tens of bars. That's very high. That's like thousands of PSI, but that's fair enough. That's probably what it is. Next is the cabin pressure in equivalent altitude, thousands of feet, 10, 12, 15, 35, 40,000 feet. And that is that lot done. Oh, no, you know what? The rudder pedals, ta-da-da, shorty, ta-da-da, lanky, ta-da-da. No, can't get it out anymore. There we go. Just right. Next we have the HUD heads-up display, various symbologies, various modes, and they're covered in our HUD symbology and modes tutorial in our Mirage playlist. Please go and watch that if you want to know more. Next, HUD controls. So, where should we start? We've got, do we want to show on the HUD everything, or do we want to declutter it temporarily? Push and hold. When using manual gunning, we can set the wingspan of the predicted target in meters here. This guy is not functional. These are two PIPA types, reticle types we can use. Next, the method of altitude that we want to show on the HUD. We can have ZB, which is barometric, H, which is radar altimeter. And interestingly, we turn on off the radar altimeter here. A off, marche on, and test. And this one here allows us to choose, you can see here, our minimum altitude for the radar warning. And you can adjust it with that knob there. Next, brightness of the display, on or off for the whole HUD. We can use a auxiliary gun sight, a manual depressible PIPA gun sight, and we can depress it there as see fit. Right console, starting at the front, liquid oxygen supply in litres, currently pretty full, as well as oxygen flow indicator there. We've got battery on or off. We've got electric power transfer switch, on or off. Left alternator, right alternator, on or off. Our light test switch is going to ping, put all our lights on. This guy's not model. This guy is interesting. It's a alert network QRA switch. We can't work out what it does, and when you turn it on, things go a bit crazy in the cockpit. I'll quickly skip over here because we've got a magnetic compass. I didn't know till recently was there, which is very cool. Then our warning, caution panel here, and I can turn them on like this. RC, do you want to go through these?
Working from the top down on the left, battery means the main battery is disconnected or failed. Next light is low oil pressure. One after that is fuel pump failure. HYD1 is hydraulic system 1 pressure below 195 bars. Next one is cockpit open or canopy not pressurized. Next one is pitot tube heating disabled. PA is autopilot system problem. The alpha means there's damage to the AOA sensors. Starting next column, TR is main or auxiliary transformer disconnected or failed. T7 turbine temperature overheat. Then left fuel pump off. Hydraulic system 2 pressure is below 195. Temp is NA. CC is battery is discharging, only 30 minutes of DC power remaining. Next one is damage of maneuverability, control gyros or servers. Next one is gain, emergency FBW computer in use. Next column, Alt1, alternator is disconnected or failed. Next one is engine controller functionality compromised. Next one is right fuel pump off. Next one is hydraulic system 2 pressure is below 140 bars or EP switch off. The next two are NA. DOM is damage to flight control surfaces or any system restricting the flight envelope. Next one is turbine RPM abnormal. Alt2 is alternator 2 disconnected or failed. Next one is engine shockwave cones functionality compromised. Fuel transfer stopped. EP is reserve pump is active. 5MnO2 is 5 minutes of oxygen remaining. Next one is NA. Next one is slats functionality compromised. Next one is takeoff configuration incorrect. Next one, last column, engine scoop functionality compromised. Fuel remaining falls below 500 kilograms. Then your bingo, fuel remaining falls below bingo level. Next one is NA. CONF is FBW gain switch is incorrect position. US EL is last emergency enabled for elevons. And park is parking brake engaged.
Well done. Next is our PCN panel, and I'm framing it here. This is all to do with navigation. It's incredibly complicated, and we're just going to skip over it. We can prep, select a waypoint to modify. Dest, select a waypoint to navigate to. Data entry, we've got alphanumeric numpad here. As well as that, we can clear and we can, enter, accept. This is not really a master. I guess we could call it a master mode here. And there are several different modes that are going to allow us to work in different ways with this. BUT, generally, these three are going to be waypoint. BAD are going to be offset, aren't they, LC?
Yes.
A few others, but that's as far as we want to go. Again, please go watch the tutorial videos for a bit more information. Just the light brightness of the panel and some switches here. Offset waypoint target, INS update, mark position, and validate data entry we'll be using to validate entries. Next is our radar IFF panel. It's an interesting one. We're not sure. Well, what does work is the interrogator here. Interrogator off, interrogator, two other modes that we can use, and I think both of them allow us to interrogate in DCS. Just make sure you don't have it off. The code here definitely doesn't work. The left or right radar I don't think does anything in DCS. We've got the mode selector here, which interestingly is in mode 4. As far as I'm aware, these other modes don't work. I stand to be corrected, but we're just following what it says. Next, we've got electronic warfare panel, jammer, ECM, standby, normal kind of semi-passive operation, and full transmission. Probably the best way to describe that with PCM. Again, proper videos on this. If you want to, the proper descriptions, go and read that. The jammer off, on test. The RWR off on test. And the missile warning system off on test. The countermeasure system, chaff and flares off, semi-automatic, fully automatic. And the program to be dispensed of chaff and flares, different programs we can choose from, or off. Some little guys here with miss. The emergency hydraulic pump switch if required. Sirens allow us to either allow or mute audible sirens. Sirens. And a pitot heat switch, which we can do there. Next, more navigation. VOR / ILS. We can tune into different frequencies. So we've got the that digit there, the megahertz, and we've got the decimal there. We can have it arret on or arret off, marche on. HG and BD are different. I think they're different antennas we can use to receive, and as far as I'm aware, that's not modelled. TACAN, tactical and navigation, similar type of thing. Do we want to use X band or Y band or code? Change the code to that digit. Change the code to that digit. Master mode. We can have it off. Receive only. Transmit and receive. And air to air, for instance, a tanker we might want to use to find it. Next, regards navigation, or regards our INS operation in this aircraft, we've got two knobs here. One is the INS mode selector, and two is the INS operation mode. And I think I'm going to need RC for this one.
So on your mode selector, you have SCC, which is emergency mode, NAV, which is navigation mode, ALCM is alignment load current memory, ALN is alignment mode, that's your full alignment, TST is test, and VEI standby, AR is off. For your operation selector, you only have two options, the others are non-functional. You have N for normal and STS for status.
Thank you. Lovely. Next, environmental control. Not hugely interesting, but it's nice that it's modelled. We've got our main mode switch, auto or manual. And we can control C for cold, F for hot. It's the right way around, isn't it, RC? So
correct.
Cold up, hotter. Air conditioning on or off or on. Depol, we cannot find out what depol is, so please, it says air exchange, but we don't know what it actually does. So let us know if you know. Regards to temperature control, automatic through to manual. Cold on this side, hot on this side. And we've got our defog. There. This one here is interesting. They call it the INS Auxiliary Heading Horizon. Do you want to try that one, RC?
That turns on your backup ADI and your emergency gyro when you have an INS failure.
Roger. Don't forget on the seat here, we can go up and down, which is cool. We've got for our night vision, so night mode and day mode, because we can have night vision goggles, obviously. Various interior flood lamps, different colours, and instrumentation brightness. So, floodlight there. There. Console panel brightness. Red floodlight. And so on. 6 different options there. We've got some fuel here. We've got right tank fuel pump, left tank fuel pump. Going to be on, obviously. And we've got a starter for the starter fuel pump here. We're going to start a switch, which is going to take the cover up, press the switch in to start. We've got ventilation selector here. And we've got a cut-off in case of emergencies. We can undo that and cut the fuel. Circuit breakers here, not modelled in the Mirage. Parking brake here. We have the ability to open, lock, and pressurize the canopy here. And if we were to unlock our canopy, let's just shut him up. Depressurize, unlock. We can actually just prop it up like that. Aha! And let it down. Or put it all the way back. And I should mention there's a mirror up there on the top. And that's it. That's the Mirage 2000C, late 2020. I hope that was useful and see you later.